Hey guys, Spud here, and in today's DCS MiG-29A Fulcrum tutorial video, we're going to go over the basic tactics, techniques, and procedures you should keep in mind when employing the MiG-29A Fulcrum in a BVR or beyond visual range fight. While we'll be breaking these things down to a very simple and clear-cut example, these basics will apply whether it's 1v1 or many versus many. When it comes to BVR scenarios, it's exceedingly important to remember to think and fight like a Soviet fighter pilot, not a NATO pilot who found him or herself in the cockpit of a Fulcrum one day. In Soviet doctrine, our Sapphire 29 radar is not our primary sensor. Our GCI, or if we have an A-50 Mainstay up, our AIC acts as our primary search and acquisition sensor, while our onboard radar is simply part of our fire control system and is only used when we are ready to actually engage a bandit with an AA-10 Alamo. We also want to use our own radar as little as possible to avoid blocking our SPO-15 Radar Warning Receiver from seeing the electronic battle space around us. While it sounds like a lot, once you start thinking, flying, and fighting like a Soviet pilot, you'll get the hang of it in no time, and start splashing Phantoms, Eagles, Vipers, and Tomcats in no time. We are back in the office of the MiG-29A Fulcrum for our basic tactics, techniques, and procedures tutorial for engaging in a BVR scenario in your MiG-29. Now, it's important to note that when you're flying and fighting in your Fulcrum, most BVR scenarios will devolve into WVR or within visual range engagements, and this is really our goal when flying the Fulcrum, so that way we can negate the strengths of the Western aircraft we're engaging with their advanced avionics, powerful radars, and long-range weapons, and bring our strengths to the forefront, such as our high thrust-to-weight ratio, our incredible maneuverability, as well as our high off-bore sight weapons capability thanks to our AA-11 Archers. So, pausing the simulation, let's take a look at the situation we have laid out in front of us today. We're currently flying an aggressor MiG-29A Fulcrum in a very cool work-in-progress paint scheme for the fictional First SOS as part of the Burning Sands universe, and I'd love to get your guys' feedback in the comments section down below on this skin, because I think it's turning out pretty well so far. And then, of course, we have an E3 Sentry that's orbiting off to the north here, who is acting as an aggressor A-50 Mainstay or ground-based GCI station. Close coordination between you flying your MiG-29 and an AIC or GCI, whether a human in multiplayer or an AI in single player, is the absolute key to success when engaging targets in the BVR regime in your MiG-29. Now, down to the south end of the Great Rift Valley here, we have our student in an American F-15C and another E3 Sentry supporting our opponent here, as well as there to give us a few more boops and bonks on our SPO-15 Radar Warning Receiver to allow us to dig a little deeper into the system. Next, when it comes to our opponent today, when you're flying an Eastern Bloc aircraft that inherently gives you a bit less situational awareness, it's really important to think about and understand the capabilities of your opponent. Of course, we're flying against an American F-15 here, so he can fly really fast, go really high, and sling those sparrows a long way, but within visual range, I have the advantage in maneuverability. We can see he's also carrying 4 AIM-9 Mike Sidewinders, a very dangerous and capable close-range weapon, but it lacks high off-bore sight capability, unlike my AA-11 Archers. He's also carrying 4 AIM-7M Sparrows, which have a maximum range out to about 20 nautical miles. And when you're flying the MiG-29 or any other Eastern Bloc aircraft, it's really important to build up a BVR timeline in your mind and a plan of how you're going to fly through that BVR timeline. And thanks to these AIM-7Ms on board this F-15, our abort range is going to be 20 nautical miles. So we need to ensure that we have an Alamo off the rails and heading downrange towards our opponent here prior to 20 nautical miles. When it comes to an engagement between aircraft carrying semi-active radar-guided missiles, it's usually the party that fires first that comes out on top in the engagement, regardless as to whether or not that initial shot actually connects with the target, because it's going to force the other guy to go on the defensive, where then we can take higher PK shots with either those same radar-guided missiles or with our archers, sidewinders, etc. So, moving back to the cockpit of our MiG-29 here, it's really important to ensure that along with coming up and mentally plotting that BVR timeline and a plan, is to also ensure you have your cockpit completely set up for the engagement prior to any missiles actually flying off the rails. This is because there is a lot of complex and confusing switchology here in the cockpit of your MiG-29, and we need to ensure that we have this all set up, because once you are going defensive, popping out chaff and flares, pulling Gs, it's going to be very difficult to get all of this correct, so that way you can fire back and defend yourself. So let's go ahead and get things set up here. We're going to set up our navigational systems to get a little bit more situational awareness up on the HUD here, even though we are carrying a GPS receiver. When it comes to the WCS knob, we're going to leave that in the nav position for now, and that's going to be in the nav position for most of the initial part of the engagement. It's very important to note that the Sapphire radar in your MiG-29 is not a search and acquisition radar like the APG radars in the noses of all of the F-10 series fighters you're probably used to flying in DCS. With the MiG-29, we offboard that search and acquisition phase to the ground-based GCI station or to our A-50 Mainstay ACI. And we're only going to be using our radar as a fire control instrument for actually engaging with our AA-10s. So that's just very important to note here. We're also going to bring our prepare switch to the up manual position, so that way we can manually fire an Alamo off of our rail prior to when the computers of the MiG-29 would normally limit us to. So that way we can ensure we take that first shot in a BVR situation with semi-active radar-guided missiles. Coming down to our radar controls themselves, we're going to bring our radar mode knob to the 12 o'clock head-on position to tune our radar to best pick up targets in a nose-on aspect. Of course, we are going to need our radar to find and track the enemy bandits as quickly and efficiently as possible, so that way we can reduce the amount of time we're actually illuminating the target with our radar, and thus blanking out the forward hemisphere of our SPO-15 here. Now, we're also going to increase our efficiency with locking a target by bringing the TWF switch to the up FHS position. Without getting too deep into the weeds of the technical stuff here, this will make our radar cursor up on our radar scope on the HUD a bit more sticky, and it will automatically snap right to the closest or strongest radar return on the radar scope, allowing us to lock our bandit quickly and efficiently and fire that Alamo with as little time as possible illuminating the radar. Next, we're also going to reduce the volume of our SPO-15 so all of the boops and bonks aren't quite as deafening once we start getting shot at. Coming over back to the left-hand side here, we have our co-op retard, no retard switch. If you're in a situation where the weather is really bad or the atmospherics are really bad from a sandstorm or something of that nature, and you're worried about the effectiveness of your IRST or IRST system, you want to make sure that this switch is in the forward co-op position to allow the radar and the IRST to work in conjunction with each other to achieve a lock-on. So with that, we should be set and ready to go. We've got good weather here today, so we're going to leave the co-op switch in the forward position. Next, we're going to need to establish our communications with our AIC in the mainstay off of our left-hand side here. We're going to open up the radio menu, go F7 for AWACS, and F4 for bogey dope.
In field 1, request bogey dope. In field 1, Overlord 1-1, Bra 192 for 100 at 15,000 knots.
Alright, so we can see that our bandit is 192, so he's right off our nose here. He's 100 nautical miles out, and he's up at 15,000 feet, and his aspect is hot, of course, which means he's nose on, and that's why we have the radar tuned to the head-on position here. Another thing to note is when you're engaging targets in your MiG-29, you want to ensure that you're slightly below the altitude of the target you're taking a shot at. This will give your radar the best chance of getting that bandit onto the scope as quickly as possible for an efficient lock-on and efficient launch of your Alamo. It will also ensure that you get the best possible conditions to get a good track using your infrared search and track system up here on the nose. One thing that I also highly recommend is to set a hotkey for your bogey dope option when dealing with the AIC, or GCI. The option you want to set is request AWACS bogey dope here, and I can have it on my throttle thanks to a modifier, which will make it much easier to stay in close coordination with that AIC and keep building that situational awareness picture as we offboard the search and acquisition phase of the engagement to the A-50 Mainstay. So we'll go ahead and use that hotkey now.
Overlord 1-1, in field 1, request bogey dope. In field 1, Overlord 1-1, Bra 192 for 90 at 15,000 knots.
Alright, so the closure rate seems to be pretty darn high. So in order to reduce the closure rate and give us more time to mentally plot our BVR timeline and to coordinate with our AIC or GCI, I'm going to make about a 30-degree turn off to the left-hand side here to reduce the closure rate and give myself a little bit more time. So heading about 160 or so should do it for us. We'll go ahead and contact the AIC again.
Request bogey dope.
So the enemy bandit is definitely closing on us for sure. However, on our SPO-15 here, we're not quite picking him up just yet. For the azimuth indication here, we're just getting a contact off of the left-hand side of our tail over our left-hand shoulder, and we can see the signal strength is very strong, which leads me to believe that this contact is definitely our E3 Sentry acting as an A-50 Mainstay, who's somewhere in this area right over here. So I'm not too worried about that at this point. Next, we'll go ahead and do the final cockpit setup, and we will lift the cover for the jettison button of our centerline external fuel tank.
Overlord 1-1, in field 1, request bogey dope. In field 1, Overlord 1-1, Bra 194 for 70 at 15,000 knots.
Alright, so he's definitely still closing with us. He's probably starting to fly an intercept vector on us to match the cranking maneuver that we did, and he's probably coordinating with his own AIC, the other E3 that's orbiting at the south end of the Great Rift Valley here. Now, one thing to note, and there's a lot of little things you need to keep in mind when flying the MiG-29 in the air-to-air environment, is we made the cranking maneuver here off to the left-hand side for a very specific reason. The sun here is off to the left-hand side of our nose, and so by maneuvering off to the left-hand side to reduce that closure rate, we're going to have to turn back to the right in order to get nose on with our bandit. And that's intentional, so that way we get the sun here as far behind us as we possibly can, so that way the sun isn't interfering with our Earth's ability to achieve a lock-on on our bandit. Now, looking at the weather around us as well here, we can see that there's fewer clouds off to the right-hand side that might be interfering with our infrared search and track system, as opposed to off to the left-hand side here. So we'll go ahead and continue on through our BVR engagement.
Overlord 1. Request bogey dope. Enfield 1. Overlord 1-1. Bra 197.
Alright, he's 60 miles out at this point. In my BVR timeline, I'm going to bring the WCS knob to the rad or radar position at roughly 40 nautical miles from the target, so that way I can reduce the amount of time I'm going to be blanking out the forward quarter of my SPO-15.
Overlord 1-1. Enfield 1. Request bogey dope. Enfield 1. Overlord 1-1. Bra 200-460 at 15.
Now, it may seem excessive getting all these updates and bogey dopes with my ACI. However, like I keep saying, guys, we've offboarded the search and acquisition portion of the BVR timeline to our mainstay. So talking to him is the only way we're building our situational awareness picture of where we're at in the BVR timeline.
Request bogey dope. Overlord 1-1. Enfield 1. Request bogey dope.
Alright, he's still 50 nautical miles out, and he's at a heading of roughly 200, so roughly off our 2 o'clock.
Enfield 1. Overlord 1-1.
Alright, he's 45 miles out, so I'm going to start to turn and get nose on to our bandit at this point. And pausing here to take a look at our SPO-15, looks like we're still not quite yet picking up the radar of the F-15 out there. But we'll go ahead and see if he pops up here in just a moment.
Overlord 1-1. Bra 200.
Okay, we're 40 nautical miles out.
19,000.
Still no, there it is, right there. So we can see at this point that our SPO-15 has picked up and identified the radar of the F-15. We can see it's in the X band here, which means it's a search radar from a teen series aircraft, and he's just off of the right-hand side of our nose. The signal strength is not all that high, so he's still pretty far away, or we have a good idea that he's still pretty far away, simply just from the SPO-15 here. Now, if we were flying an engagement against, say, an F-15E Strike Eagle or an F-14A or B Tomcat, the signal strength would be really huge, and it makes total sense why Iraqi MiG pilots tended to run away from American Tomcat pilots whenever they popped up on their SPOs, because the signal strength of the radar from an AUG-9 is just so strong. It really was illuminating to me as a history geek when I first engaged an F-14 in the MiG-29 here in DCS. So at this point, we'll go ahead and bring our WCS switch over to the rad position, and we can see up on our radar scope here, our cursor has automatically snapped right to our F-15 Bandit. And this is thanks to bringing the TWF switch up to the FHS position here and making it very easy and very efficient for us to achieve a lock-on while simultaneously reducing the amount of time that the forward hemisphere of our SPO-15 is blanked out. So at this point, we're still going to be coordinating with our AIC in order to keep building that situational awareness picture, even though we have the Bandit up on our radar scope.
Overlord.
And we're going to go ahead and try to achieve a lock.
Request bogey dope. Enfield 1. Overlord 1-1. Bra 200 at 19,000 knots.
Alright, his aspect is still hot, so he's coming right at us, setting up for a BVR shot with his AIM-7 mics. So we can see here he's 30 nautical miles out, which is correlated with the range scale here on our HUD, and we'll probably take a shot just before 20 nautical miles in order to force him defensive, at which point we can either switch over to the CC or close combat mode and use our ERST for locking him up for an engagement with our archers, or go over to the helmet mounted sight position here to take a high off bore sight shot with him. So we'll go ahead and continue on here, still coordinating with our AIC.
1-1. Enfield 1. Request bogey dope.
We'll go ahead and bring our HMS sight out of its housing, so that way we don't forget that. He's 25 miles out. I'm going to reset the trim on my MiG-29 here, and you can see my nose fell quite a bit there once I reset the trim. But because the MiG-29 is manually trimmed, as we are trimming the aircraft for straight and level flight as we fly through our mission, we're going to reduce the amount of maneuverability we have available to us. And it's going to need to be reset prior to engaging an aircraft past the merge, so that way we can get the best maneuverability possible out of our MiG-29. Now, it is going to make flying the MiG-29 even more of a handful here, and you may need to use 2 hands on the stick, but it's better than artificially reducing how much AOA you can pull past the merge. Alright, so we're coming to our abort range. We'll go ahead and take the shot.
Overlord 1-1, in field 1, request bogey dope. In field 1, Overlord 1-1, Bra 215, Fort 16, at 18,000 knots.
Alright, I can start to see the enemy F-15 visually at this point, and we'll see if he's starting to go defensive thanks to our Alamo shot. And at this point, yep, it looks like he's definitely turning defensive, and it looks like he's turning towards the sun, which is not a great thing for our Earth system and trying to achieve a lock with our R-73s. But we'll do the best we can here, and we're going to hit the burners and continue closing with our bandit. And he is totally defensive at this point. So we are going to keep pushing up on to him, and we're going to bring our WCS knob to the CC or close combat position. Now, I highly recommend binding the WCS knob here to your HOTAS in order to change between these multiple options as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now, at this point, we have to be very, very careful because he may get nose back onto us very quickly and efficiently and take a shot at us with an AIM-9. So we're going to have to ensure that we're definitely pre-flaring as we're heading into the merge here. All right, so this is going to be a lot happening all in quick succession. We're also going to need to bring our inboard-outboard switch here to the outboard position to select our 2 R-73s. So let's go ahead and do it here. Pre-flaring. He's locking me. I'm going to go to the helmet-mounted sight. Gonna pop the speed brakes. Here we go. We're gonna try to achieve a lock. Can't get it. There's a shot. Out of params, we missed him. And we're definitely offensive in this fight. And splash. Looks like we got him. Scratch 1 F-15 Eagle. That's a lesson that student will never forget. Alrighty guys, hopefully this tutorial helped you guys out, and it was informative as to how to fly the MiG-29A Fulcrum in a BVR scenario that will inevitably evolve into a WVR or within visual range engagement, where the MiG-29A Fulcrum really makes her money. So thanks for watching guys, I hope this video helps you guys out for the future of flying the MiG-29. Please leave a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Fly safe out there and enjoy this beautiful game.